Hello world, it's Goju with you once again. Hope you're all doing well. Welcome to another vlog, another unedited vlog from me. And today we're going to be discussing the future of the Monsterverse, my thoughts on this. And I'm going to be covering some news that came out a few weeks ago that I haven't even really talked about yet, but I'm a little late to. But mainly it's not so much the news, but also just giving my thoughts on the Monsterverse the future of the MonsterVerse now that Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire has come out. It's been out for a few weeks, and we can say that it's definitely been. We can say it is a box office success. It's not even a question. It's I believe it's one of the lowest budgeted MonsterVerse films, or the lowest budget MonsterVerse film, and it's already grossed like 500 million as of recording this, over 500 million US dollars worldwide, and it's getting pretty close to catching up to Godzilla 2014's worldwide box office. I will say, however, that film came out 10 years ago, so if you adjust for inflation, that would change it. It doesn't matter. Regardless, even based on New Empire's original box office, original budget, the box office for the film is very good. It's very impressive. All things considered, the how things are going anyway in the world economically, the film is doing very well compared to other films that recently, especially last year, did not do very well at the box office. So Godzilla continues to be good at the box office. Godzilla minus one, New Empire. Godzilla is doing really well at the box office, which is I don't I can't believe I never thought as a Godzilla fan I'd see the day where Godzilla is doing better at the box office than like Marvel and DC. What a crazy time we live in as Godzilla fans. So with that in mind, right, the film is clearly a success. We know that Monarch Legacy of Monsters was at least number one on Apple TV Plus. The thing with the streaming platforms is they don't really release, some. It's not like TV that there's ratings, and it's not like movies that there's a box office. So there's not really a way to know a performance on streaming. They just tell you how many people viewed the first episode or the season or however, but like because it's very different the way they make money because it's based on subscriptions and things like that. So there's not an easy way to say if Legacy of Monsters was a success, and I don't even know what a success means for a streaming service. If a lot of people watch it, a lot of people sign up to watch it, it's kind of now it's but it did apparently do well enough to get to number one on Apple TV Plus, and I think it was quite highly viewed. They did promote it quite a bit, and it had some good reviews. So we could say Legacy of Monsters was a success, and especially with the news that was announced that I'll talk about in a moment, will pretty much confirm that Apple TV Plus's Monarch Legacy of Monster was a success. Um, so with that in mind, the MonsterVerse is continuing. And obviously, if you've seen my review of New Empire, I obviously have some, not some worries, but just some things that, you know, I keeping in mind that what I'd like to see in future MonsterVerse films or shows, considering what we've gotten so far, especially with how I felt about New Empire. Look, I think the reality is if the film is done well, I think probably Legendary is just going to want to do another Godzilla and Kong thing. I don't know what they're going to call it this time. Godzilla and Kong, Godzilla with Kong, Godzilla. Who knows? They'll use an A instead of an X or some other. They'll use like a symbol instead of. Who knows what nonsense they'll come up with. Um, Godzilla, just call it Godzilla and Kong at this point. I don't know. But we're probably going to get another crossover film. I mean, Adam Wingard already has kind of said his idea is to finish the trilogy of Godzilla and Kong. So, they have ideas on how to finish it. And again, if we get another Godzilla and Kong film, again, I hope that they change some things from New Empire. Not trying to say I didn't like New Empire. It was fun and enjoyable. But however, there are some things about the film that even I was a bit like, okay, this is getting a little too much in some regards. And so I hope they still also maybe pull back in some aspects, especially in terms of the silliness or the comedy, and make the film a bit more like Godzilla versus Kong, which I think was a good balance between action and comedy. Um, or some of the original MonsterVerse films. Like I think Kong Skull Island is a good film that's, yes, it's also kind of silly, but also has some dark and serious moments. And it's not the greatest film ever either, honestly. But it's still like, honestly, Kong Skull Island is still one of my. I still quite enjoy that film. I think as a MonsterVerse film, I think Kong Skull Island is great. So if we get something a bit more like that, a bit more fun but dark at the same time, I would really enjoy that. Instead of kind of going in the more silly comedic direction they went with in New Empire. Um, but then at the same time, like, obviously, what about other movies? What do you think they're gonna do there? And it's, for me personally, just uh, especially considering the news that I'm about to talk about, I don't necessarily know we'll see other films. That's not really been confirmed yet. I mean, another film has not been confirmed yet at all. But I definitely think if we're going to see a movie, it's probably going to be another Godzilla Kong crossover film. Um, so let's look at the news. Let's look at this news that, well, news. It's news that I didn't talk about. That probably other people have already discussed. That news that came out quite a bit ago. But the basically what's been officially announced. So there's not been a new movie announced, but what has been announced is that Legacy of Monsters has been renewed for another season, and there's going to be multiple spin-offs as well. So reading this article, Variety announced this. God, this was like several weeks ago, so I know I'm late on this, but they will renew Legacy of Monsters for a second season. I think we kind of knew this was going to happen anyway, and I had already heard uh, before the show had even come out that second season was already kind of like been in the plans. So that's not surprising to me. So as again, that kind of confirms that Legacy of Monsters must have been a success if they're going to renew it for another season. But apparently, as well, Apple has made a deal with Legendary to create multiple spin off series that will be set in the Monsterverse. They're not really giving us any details on what those spin offs are going to be about, but they have said we couldn't be more excited for viewers to not only have the chance to embark but to embark on new epic journeys in the franchise as we expand Legendary's Monsterverse. Um, this is kind of a description of the first season. And again, if you've seen my review of it, you already know my thoughts on Legacy of Monsters. Has big screen. Yeah, so the franchise has altogether generated over $2 billion at the box office. So that's kind of the only news we have. Season 2 renewal and several spin-offs, whatever that means by spin-offs. And now we can kind of begin to speculate what that means exactly, or what I would personally like to see. For me, I think there's a lot of things you can do in terms of spin-offs or the second season. I think in the second season, so again, this is spoilers if you haven't seen Legacy of Monsters. Apologies, but if you haven't seen it by now, sorry, I guess. But I think as we learned in the first season, right, they're laying the groundwork for Apex and everything, which I thought that was fantastic. That was my favorite. One of the things I really liked about Legacy of Monsters, the first season. So they're laying the groundwork for Apex and cybernetics and everything, and basically Mechagodzilla. So I would like for them to continue that path and to continue to show us like how they secretly built Mechagodzilla, how they kind of learned about the Hollow Earth energy and everything like that. I think that's something they should continue to cover. I also would like to maybe see the events of King of the Monsters, but from their perspective. So like when King Ghidorah, Monster Zero shows up and starts causing havoc all over the world, what it's like for them and kind of the world after that. Because I feel like Godzilla vs. Kong doesn't cover that. It's just like, it happened. Okay, 5 years later, no problem. Like, the world's fine. It was a bit like, what? This should have been devastating. Like, the world was under attack by multiple titans at once. It was, like, horrible. And Godzilla vs. Kong just kind of, like, brushed it off. Like, not a big deal. Okay. So I'd like to see in Season 2 them kind of cover what's happening in the world when Laura shows up. And like I said, more focus on Apex. Maybe some more discoveries of the Hollow Earth and everything, but I don't know necessarily they're going to touch on Scar King. I think the way I see Monarch Legacy of Monsters is kind of filling in the gaps. throughout the movies. So I think they're still catching up to King of the Monsters and Godzilla versus Kong. So I don't expect anything on Shimu and Scar King, and I don't necessarily need that at this point. But that's kind of where the spin-offs could come in. Like it would be, I mean, obviously there's lots of things they could do. I think one of the biggest one I think we all want is something kind of set in the past, the ancient times, like during the Titan War, with the I guess the Iwis in the Hollow Earth, when humans lived in the Hollow Earth with the Titans. So if we follow New Empire's explanation, then I guess it would be cool to see a film about the rise of a film or a series. I mean, a mini series or a spin-off about the Scar King and how he came to power, how he started the original war. Maybe a series about when King Ghidorah first arrived. uh, I think there's so much potential there that to go back in time to, and I don't mean just to the 50s, but like, I mean thousands of years, like the ancient people in the Hollow Earth, and a show about them and living with the Titans. I would love to see that, and I think that's where you could do a lot of stuff. Like I said, Scar King, the rise of Scar King, maybe how King Ghidorah first came to Earth. Also, maybe you could start, spin-offs for me. I'd like to see focused on other Titans as well. Like, I think Mothra could definitely get her own spin-off. Rodan maybe that would be a dream come true. But I think Mothra, you probably could at this point, right? And then maybe spin-off set. If we're not gonna get another like Godzilla or Kong solo film, then maybe a more of a spin-off on Godzilla, and kind of exploring Godzilla's maybe origins and past. Maybe about Dagon. I don't know if that has now been retconned out of the canon technically, because I don't know if Dagon, because that Dagon was from a comic book. I don't know if the comic books are canon still. It's kind of confusing. The Monsterverse lore is a bit fuzzy, but maybe they could bring Dagon into the Monsterverse officially in live action. Maybe a series they explore Dagon and the ancient Godzillas, because I would love to see there's other Godzillas in the MonsterVerse. They just make it seem like Godzilla was the only one that fought the Scar King or Kong, but then there's Dagon's skeleton in the original film. Dr. Serizawa says, no, this is much older, so I'd love to see something maybe focusing on Godzilla, maybe the ancient Godzillas, maybe even bringing in Godzilla Jr., because if they kind of did that for Kong, I think it's because the other thing is like with the MonsterVerse, one thing I've noticed is like, what more do you do with Godzilla at this point in terms of his development? Like he's kind of the king of the Titans on the surface. He does cause havoc, but the humans seem to not care that much. I guess they do care, but they don't care. I don't know. He's kind of a good guy-ish. I don't know. They don't seem to know what to do with Godzilla. But that's a whole nother problem because these movies don't really focus on Godzilla that much. He's just kind of there. So I'd like a spin-off series that focuses on Godzilla, maybe the origins of the Godzilla species or the ancient ancestors, and then maybe even bring in like a young Godzilla, like a Godzilla Jr. I'd love to see that. And then I guess you could do other spin-offs in ancient times. It would be kind of cool to see other classic not even Titans, but classic kaiju. We want to see like Anguirus, and we want to see Rodan come back. And they said spin-offs, plural, so there's a lot they could do. I'd also like to see what Kong is like just in the Hollow Earth by himself, something that just focuses on Kong without needing Godzilla in it. I think that's what I'd like to see. Is let's focus on Mothra. Let's focus on Godzilla. Let's focus on Kong, but in separate things, not just in one movie. Give them their own screen time, which is what they deserve. And then save that for the movies where you have the big crossover. And especially, I think these spin-offs could really help to build up to the third Godzilla Kong film, because honestly, it feels like that's gonna kind of the MonsterVerse, but end this. We want to compare it to Marvel, like this phase of the MonsterVerse will kind of end with the next Godzilla Kong film, because one could say Godzilla versus Kong was the end of the first phase. I mean, it pretty much was, because that's what the MonsterVerse was built to do, to set up Godzilla versus Kong. So that was like the first phase. Now we're in the second phase, if you're following kind of what Marvel calls their movies. which was started with that Kong animated show, and then there was Legacy of Monsters, and now New Empire. We're in the second phase, if you will, of the MonsterVerse. So then probably the next part of this phase will be season 2 and these spin-offs. And this phase will either end, with the movie, or the movie will be the beginning of the next phase. This phase will end with the next movie. But I think the second season, the spin-offs will probably help to lead up to the film, even in small chunks. And I'd like to see, like I said, as always, classic kaiju. I'd like to see something that focuses just on Godzilla, that focuses just on Kong, and maybe give Mothra some love, because that would be cool. And something in the ancient times. I want to see this war. I want to see the Scar King come to power. I want to see the ancient Godzillas. I want to see the humans living with Titans in the Hollow Earth. I'm so tired of hearing about it, seeing it in cave paintings. Like, this franchise has a problem of, like, they're not following show don't tell, because all they do is they tell us about the ancient times. They show us cave paintings and they show us ruins, but I want to see it. I want to see it happening. I don't want to hear about it from a mural or a painting or a ruin, or see cave paintings of it or something like that. I want to see it. And so that's what I think they should do with these spin-offs. I want to see, like, cool to see stuff in the 50s and the 60s. That was neat and all, but like, I want to see stuff from like 2,000 years ago, thousands of years ago. That's what I want to see. And that's where there's so much rich lore that the Monsterverse hasn't got, which would really, that's kind of what I feel like the Monsterverse has left at this point, is just like that rich lore from the ancient times. Because the next film, I think, is going to be, I don't know what else they're going to come up with except aliens, right? Like, I think I've heard this already, that, yeah, well, what happens next? Aliens at this point, a Final Wars, Destroy All Monsters type movie, which I'm fine with. But I think before then, I'd love to see more stuff set in the ancient times, in the Hollow Earth. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on the spin-offs and everything. I'm excited. I enjoyed Legacy of Monsters. I had my issues with it, obviously. It wasn't perfect. There's some things I really liked, some things that were like, okay. I hope the writing gets a bit better. Maybe the second season will be better. And I'm excited for the spin-offs. And then we'll have to see if they announce another film. They probably will. But I don't know when they'll announce that and when they'll give details on that. But for sure, the spin-offs will probably be, hopefully, very tied into the movies. The second season will probably continue to build up to the next films in the Monsterverse. So, look, the Monsterverse is here to stay. I'm excited. There's obviously some things I want to see happen, and I want them to avoid certain things. But I'm not going to hate on the Monsterverse. I'm not one of those people that hates the Monsterverse. I try to avoid being a fanboy, right? Like, I'm just here because I'm a Godzilla fan. I'm a Godzilla fan, but I'm not a Monsterverse fanboy. I'm not a Toho fanboy. I'm a Godzilla fan. I'm a fan of Godzilla. I'm not a fanboy who fights for Toho or for Legendary. I just want cool movies, cool shows. That's what I want. And I want to see stuff with Godzilla and Kong and all these monsters I love. That's what I want, and I want them to be good. I don't really care who makes them. I just want them to be good. So I'm not going to sit here and argue like this is good, this is bad. I don't want to hate on the Monsterverse. I don't want to hate on Toho. I just want to have fun and be excited for these films and shows. That's what all I want to do. So anyway, that's kind of my thought. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think. Are you excited for these spin-offs and shows? Do you want another movie? Do you want more movies? What would you like to see in another movie or a show? Let me know. I love hearing from you guys. If you like this video, like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. And I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.